Politics, a podcast where we talk about Harry Potter and politics, and we reread, and I don't know, talk about shit. I don't know what else to say. My name is Avery, and I am your co host, a recovering English major who's, you know, drinking Pinot Grigio out of a stemless glass with ice cubes in it because I am now a mom, I guess, even though I don't have children.
You have children. You have fur babies. Those are
Yeah, I
children.
guess. As I was putting the ice cubes in my wine, I was like, yeah, this is it. This is middle age.
You're not quite middle age yet. There, don't jump the gun there. Uh,
It feels like it. I think quarantine has, accelerated my internal aging process of like, oh, okay, I guess I'm really old now. Not
yeah,
just
well,
old, but like really old.
yeah, well, quarantine has aged all of us in some way or another. That's for sure. Goodness. I'm Helene, your co-host, producer, and drinker of coffee and taker of naps. All of those things. That is me.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I tried to take a nap today, like
Oh,
3.
I didn't take one today. I wish, but in general, I am a taker of naps.
Well, I tried to take one today before recording because, you know, I'm just having one of those days where you're like, you want to power through, and you're like, I'm gonna be an optimist, and then like kind of nothing goes your way. And I was really tired because I only had 2 hours of sleep last night. Shout out to my dogs for making that happen. And then they wouldn't stop barking. All the times I wanted to take a nap and I was trying really hard. So shout out to my dogs for also making that happen.
Yep, I feel that. I feel that.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, but enough about me. What are we talking about today, Helene?
Well, today we're going to be covering chapter 21 of Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, The Eye of the Snake. This is the one where a whole lot of stuff happens. It's a jam packed chapter. Hagrid teaches a class about Thestrals, only to be interrupted and mocked by Umbridge. Harry and Cho share an awkward and wet first kiss under the mistletoe after Dumbledore's army meeting. And not last but not least, Harry witnesses an attack on Arthur Weasley as if he were the perpetrator.
Yeah, that kills me every time.
Oh, it's awful.
Every time I like now just kind of clear my throat, I'm like, oh, I hope I don't sound like that. Anyhow, this is the place where we thank our lovely, lovely patrons for making this show possible. Now, if any of our listeners would like to help keep our bills paid for the podcast and keep it alive, and also be a part of a very exclusive club, not unlike Dumbledore's Army, you can hop on over to patreon.com/occupolitics. $2 a month will get you access to bonus content for every single episode, and $5 a month and $10 a month will get you physical goodies for every month that you've been a patron at that level every 3 months.
Yes, one of our newer patrons, Lucy, took a picture of the stickers she got from, I believe, December or maybe it was November, and tagged us on Instagram and posted them with her little. It was like a Hogwarts Debate Club sticker and the Percy sticker, and it was just so fun to see. So if you get your stickers and you're so excited about them that you cannot hold them in, please take a picture, post it on social media, and tag us because we love to see it.
I mean, honestly, the Percy Weasley sticker is Loki one of my favorite ones so far that I've made.
Oh yeah, it's great. Those stickers, that was a good batch of stickers. It was a pretty great batch.
As if I was capable of anything but good batches of stickers, let's be real.
Exactly. Right. No, what was I thinking? No, but really, if this sounds like something that you would be super excited for, coming home, opening your mailbox, seeing a bunch of really cool original design stickers from Accupolitics, you need to sign up to be a patron because you're going to want these stickers. They are pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, I'm really excited about January, February, and March, which are still in the sketching phase, but we'll get there.
Yes. Well, another Patreon goodie that you would get when you pledge for on our Patreon page is exclusive content. So today's Patreon exclusive content that we're going to be discussing is another Girl Who Lives segment where we examine what the series might have looked like if one of the characters were gender flipped and what the societal implications of that change may have been on that person, the people around them, the series as a whole. And this week, we're going to be focusing on the one, the only Gilderoy Lockhart.
You know, because he's like so super humble, so devoting an entire segment on him is just what he deserves.
Yes, can't wait to see what a female Gilderoy Lockhart would look like. So stick around and pledge to our Patreon if you haven't yet to get that fun exclusive content. But now we're going to switch over and talk about our Potter Watch segment where we discuss some of the latest news in the United States.
Oh, Potter Watch, what the ministry doesn't want you to know. So, I don't know if we have collectively as a society decided that we shouldn't be covering, what happened a few weeks ago and on January 6th as much anymore. I mean, just a casual ask from a concerned citizen because a lot more information is coming to light. And even so, 45 Republican senators are like, should we really hold a trial?
I I'm like one of those people that like wants to believe the best in people, and I'm like, oh, they'll do the right thing. Enough people will do the right thing so that this awful person goes to jail. But I don't know. It might not happen right now.
Well,
I'm just
not unlike
since it hasn't happened yet. I'm just saying, okay, well, I'm just gonna hold out hope that they convict him. That's all I can.
not unlike my day today. You may have the best of intentions and have a good and open heart. And then just things people make it really hard for you to believe in them. One such person, obviously, who we really never trusted, but hoped that, he would maybe listen to his better angels if he has any, is Mitch McConnell.
I've actually thoroughly been enjoying the Twitter feud between Seth Rogen and Ted Cruz that's been happening.
Oh no, that is a gem, a gem. Now the newest we can come back to we can circle back to that as like a good closing thing for this on a high note. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what I really want to talk about really quickly is a developing series of stories that I don't know if you've seen this, Helene, but apparently about 12 to 15 people were at one of the Trump Hotel in Washington, D.C., the night before the insurrection, planning said insurrection. And those included his adult sons, his large adult sons, and Roger Stone, and members of Congress.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, it doesn't surprise me.
It's not surprising, but
No.
like someone out there spilling that tea.
Good. Get him.
So this comes to us via Seth Abramson, who is not necessarily a journalist. He's like kind of between like an attorney, investigative journalist hybrid type person. And he's been breaking all these types of stories for a long time about the corruption in the Trump administration, never proven wrong. So he has a pretty good track record about it. And like, it just seems like everyone else is just like, but no, Biden has a Rolex and a Peloton.
It's yeah, I gotta say the attempts at attacks and scandals for Biden so far have just been laughable. Just like
Well,
after everything we went through these last 4 years, I just
but you know what? I heard I was listening to commentators talk about this, as one does, because, probably that's why I can't sleep. But people are acting like quote unquote the media, right? Like the big companies are acting as if, okay, so we got rid of Trump, so now we go back to before Trump, how we
yeah,
used to conduct ourselves, right? And remember the
nothing.
tan suit, you know?
Yeah, nothing will ever be the same. They can't just pretend that the last 4 years didn't happen.
So 2021 is a vastly different space, not just because of the pandemic, but because of all of it, right? Than 2015.
Yeah,
You cannot act as if these 4 years and like Trump's rise to prominence and power did not happen.
no, you can't.
And it's almost like people want that quote unquote back to normalcy, and they're trying to shove it down our throats. And we're like, we're dying here, first of all. Second of all, this shit's not gonna fly with us. So, like, why aren't you covering like the fucking thing that happened literally 3 weeks ago?
It's a great question. People need to be acting like this isn't just normal because it's not. The world is not normal. It's not the same as it was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. However, on the other side of things, I can't, like, okay, I understand wanting to hold Joe Biden accountable and like wanting to make sure that he does all the things he said he was going to do. But getting mad at
Hmm.
him because he hasn't like changed one policy in the first 5 days or whatever, like you gotta, he'll get to it. Like people, like there are a lot of policies, a lot of things he has to undo from the last 4 years, and a lot of things he has to fix. And just because he didn't get to it in the first week of his 4 year term does not mean that he's not going to do it.
Well, you know what? I'm really glad you brought that up, because one of the things that I think, we are as a society now been kind of conditioned to like instant gratification. And now I'm like sounding like a boomer. And I swear to God, I don't mean it that way. But just, I mean, yeah, keep politicians accountable, and put their feet to the fire, and don't let them forget. I am completely 100% with you on that, and with
Yeah,
everyone else on that. But, and I'm just echoing what you already said.
yeah,
But God only knows what mess that man walked into, first of
yeah,
all.
exactly.
Second of all, there was no real transition, exchange of information. So even in administrations where there's like communication between the outgoing and incoming administration, there's kind of a little bit of a, catch up time. Kind of
Yeah,
like when you start a new job, like it's not like you get trained and, and
yeah,
then it's training wheels off. I mean, we are lucky that Biden does have experience in this, but at the
yeah.
same time, like a person can only prioritize so much in a given time frame.
Well, yeah, and that's why they call it the first like 100 days, right? That's why a lot of
Hmm.
people focus on the first 100 days. And Biden has like I don't know if most people have seen it, but like Biden has a very very comprehensive plan for his first 100 days. He has like it
Also,
planned
like,
down to the day of like what he's going to take care of each day. So like that
Helene,
is
like, I don't know if people know about this, but like, there's a pandemic going on that's killing people,
what?
and we don't have enough vaccines. I don't know if this is breaking news. For
I
this
know.
just in, people are dying from a virus, and
Exactly.
we don't
No.
have enough vaccines to cover people.
I just like people I know that people don't want to just like trust that Biden knows what he's doing, although you should because he's was the vice president for 8 years. But like
And a
you got
senator
if
a
you
bajillion years before that, you know?
yeah, okay, but you gotta you like even if you don't trust that he knows what he's doing, you have to know trust that he knows more like what he's doing more than Trump did. Like he has more of a plan than Trump ever did. So just like try. I know it's hard for people to like have faith, but you gotta have faith. I don't know.
You know
I
what
think
this
I saw.
is? You know what this is, Helene? This is trauma from leaving an abusive relationship. And you get
Yeah.
into a new relationship, and at first you're like, oh my God, he treats me like a human being. He's the one. And then you're like, oh, he hasn't texted in 0.5 seconds. Should I break up with him?
Yeah.
Because I am so terrified of being hurt again.
Yeah, and I mean there are a lot like I the issues I've seen of people taking with him on Twitter are like serious policy issues that he made.
Completely legitimate. Yeah,
Yeah,
correct.
like I think I saw something about how he hasn't done anything yet about the kids in cages that were separated from their parents at the border. And like how dare he not have done that yet?
He did, and I will step in and say, sure, there's not like an executive order that is specifically for that, but he
Yeah.
did give an order to start, reconnecting families so that, by the time the kids can be liberated, they will have family members to go to.
Yeah, so I
So
mean
it's like a
I
logistics problem, you know what I mean?
yeah, so I'm just saying that like yeah, he might not have done it in the first 5 days, but that does not mean that he is not going to do it and he's not and that he's not working as hard as he possibly can to get it done quickly.
Well, I think it's just also like, and I was talking to Seth about this earlier this week because I was really enraged, as one always is when they are on Twitter, and I was like, do they not understand that to rebuild something or to even build something, right,
Yeah.
takes more time than to tear something down?
Oh
Because
yeah.
people are like, oh, but Trump was able to like tear this down in like one day. Why can't he build it in one day? It's like because the process of building something is is far
It's
harder than to tear it down.
yeah. No, I mean that's excuse me, extremely accurate. I
Like, have you tried building a house of cards? Like, how hard is it to build a house of cards, and how like easy is it to like tear it down? Like, think about that.
yeah.
That's literally how it is.
Yeah. It's it's difficult, but
And I'm not being like an apologist. I do think that we should keep a like strong eye, like a sharp eye on him, and put
yeah,
and keep public pressure on him
for
to
sure.
like not negotiate our stimulus checks down to like 5 cents. But because a girl's got to eat,
Right.
and
Yep.
there are a lot and not just me, like let's say I don't qualify, and because I have a full-time job right now, it's fine, like I can still eat, but like there are a lot of people out there who have been out of work for months now,
Almost a year.
and those people are disproportionately, guess who, women of color.
Yep. So obviously, in conclusion, hold the guy accountable, but don't be unrealistic with your expectations as well. Try and cut him some slack because he's walking into a burning house with like a small cup of like a Dixie cup full of water. So just like chill.
All right, so before you get to Seth Rogen, which is like cherry on top of my like Sunday of a week, the only good part, I also want to bring up that today on Wednesday, January 27th, when as of this recording date, the Department of Homeland Security issued a national terrorism advisory bulletin against, guess what, domestic terrorism, and it was linked to the whole stop the steal movement bullshit, white supremacists, oath keepers, proud boys, the conglomerate of people, that the conglomerate of domestic terrorists who perpetrated the violence against our democracy. And it says that it was issued today at 11 a.m. and it expires April 30th, 2021. So
What does that like mean for us? Like what does the bulletin do?
like it's like you know how they do like threat levels for like pandemics sometimes in certain cities, like it is safe to go
Sure.
outside, it is moderately safe to go outside, outside, don't go outside. It's kind of like a threat level assessment. It says, I'm going to read from the bulletin. Throughout 2020, domestic violence extremists targeted individuals with opposing views engaged in First Amendment protected nonviolent protest activity. Domestic violence extremists motivated by a range of issues, including anger over COVID-19 restrictions, the 2020 election results, and police use of force, have plotted on occasion carried out attacks against government facilities. Which, by the way, like, don't lump in BLM with like Proud Boys. Not the same.
Well, that's not domestic terrorism.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
don't even. So, as we know, a lot of domestic terrorism laws that have been enacted over police people of color and movements led by people of color. And I am pissed that there's a false equivalency between BLM activists and like Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and white supremacists. And they encourage state, local, tribal, and territorial homeland security partners to continue prioritizing physical security measures, particularly around government facilities, to protect people and critical infrastructure. They ask
okay.
the public to report suspicious activity and threats of violence. Guess what? Like, people are not going to report white people doing something suspicious. They're going to report people of color, including online activity, to local law enforcement, FBI field offices, or their local fusion center. And it tells us to avoid large crowds, including protests, because it's safest due to ongoing pandemic conditions, and to be responsible for your personal safety. Like, no shit, Sherlock.
Okay.
I know, I mean, I knew about this not just because of the news, but because I work at a place that has certain contracts on a base, right? On a military base. And this bulletin has placed additional security restrictions on who is allowed to go in and out of the base, and, how long it takes for people to process in and out. So we can move on to like the lighter news.
Okay.
Well, not only is Seth Rogen doing like amazing pottery during quarantine, right? Like, what an artist. What an
No, he
artist.
is. He is just handing Ted Cruz's ass to him on Twitter, and it is just so great. Calling him a fascist, an
Oh, I'm
insurrectionist.
sorry.
The
Is
things
he
that,
saying the truth? Is that what is happening?
yeah, no, he's doing it. Well, it's great, and because Ted Cruz is like 100% taking the bait, right? And retweeting him at every chance he gets to call him like like a crying, bleeding liberal who is so blinded by his wealth and fame and celebrity that he can't see the working class. And he, all the talking points that Republican conservatives have when celebrities try to like, how dare they be like human beings with opinions and thoughts, like when they try to express
Oh,
those.
I'm sorry. Are we talking about the same Ted Cruz who's like so out of touch with reality? He grew a beard thinking that looked good on him? Like,
Yeah, it's. I mean, when people like Ted Cruz think that they understand the working class better than you know
someone who actually
anyone
made it
else,
on their
like
own?
yeah, like it's just sad. But that Twitter food has been great, and um, I love how Seth Rogen just like doesn't give a shit, and he's just like, I'm gonna keep on fighting with him because he's just making himself look even more like an idiot. Um, there was I need to find it. There was like an iconic AOC tweet. I think I retweeted it, so let me see if I can
Oh,
find it on my
AOC is
profile.
giving me life with her Ted Cruz, like airing out
Oh,
all the receipts. Oh,
she is
beautiful.
she's
Chef's
just like
kiss.
she is just like she's an artist of Ted Cruz slams. Oh, here it is. So Ted Cruz, he tweeted, by rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement, President Biden indicates he's more interested in the views of the citizens of Paris than in the jobs of the citizens of Pittsburgh.
Fucking idiot.
This agreement will do little I know. This agreement will do little to affect the climate and will harm the livelihoods of Americans. And AOC Alessandria Ocasio Cortez retweeted and said, Nice tweet, Senator Cruz. Quick question. Do you also believe that the Geneva Convention was about the views of the citizens of Geneva? Asking for everyone who believes the U.S. senators should be competent and not undermine our elections to incite insurrection against the United States. And I just like died.
If anyone, okay, so like this might be a little too personal, but the personal is political, whatever. I have like this thing where I kind of refuse to wear hoop earrings because of like the negative stereotypes associated between like Puerto Ricans and only wearing hoop earrings. But if anyone can make me wear hoop earrings, it's Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, who wears hoop earrings like a motherfucking boss. And also, obviously, super competent, super intelligent, great at using social media for her platform, and at keeping Democrats' feet to the fire.
Yes, she is peak like millennial, honestly. She is like successful, amazing millennial. I'm all for it.
Also, side note of my ancestry, maybe we're like super distant cousins. Who knows?
That's just perpetuating the stereotype that everybody in Puerto Rico is
I
related.
mean, they kind of
Or
are.
everybody
Like,
or everybody of like one minority group is related. Like all Jews are related or all, like
I mean, have you seen the island? It's 100 miles wide by 35 miles, in height.
okay, I mean, obviously you would know better than I
No,
would, but
I'm
I
just
feel like that's not
kidding.
a great
I'm just
stereotype to be
kidding.
pushing.
Well, it is 100 miles wide by 35 height, but not saying we're definitely related. This is just wishful thinking on my part because she's so awesome. And also, we both love a red lipstick. What's not to love?
We'll figure out your family tree later. Let's talk about politics in terms of Harry Potter now in our Hogwarts Debate Club segment, where we reveal the politics that we think were most prevalent in the chapter to each other with a brief definition of what that politic means, and then deep dive into it later.
I'm really excited about this one, Helene. So, I read the chapter.
Did you? Good job.
I actually prepared like I actually do every week. And I was having a really hard time coming up with a politic because, as you said earlier, this chapter is jam packed. Like, too
Oh
much
yeah.
happens in it. So I had to take like a more eagle's eye view of it, trying to like conceptualize it in my mind. All of this like wine infused rambling to say that my politic today is the politics of privilege. It is something that we can see when we do not have it and others do, or when we go through an event that strips us of our privilege. But those with privilege cannot see their own privilege. In this chapter, thestrals are kind of like my like main idea of privilege. The vision that Harry has and Hermione's understanding of Cho's struggles is a type of thing that certain people can see, but others cannot. So the people with the privilege or with power, quote unquote, cannot see what the people struggling can.
Yeah. Mine is different, but I think kind of connected in a way.
Correct. As I
So
see it in the
we
doc.
picked yes. So we both picked P words, which I thought was like I like the alliteration, politics of, you know. So mine is the politics of perspective. This one was kind of like I actually was thinking about what I knew happened in the chapter before I reread it, and was like, oh, like perspective would be a good one. And then I read it and I was like, ooh, it works here and it works here and it works here. And so it kind of like was like a self-fulfilling prophecy kind of.
The politics of prophecy. What?
Yeah, oh, there you go. Although I wouldn't really say what happens to Harry at the end is like prophecy.
No, I'm just
but
kidding.
yes. So anyway, perspective. So lots of things happen in the chapter that are perceived differently by different people based on their personal life experiences, what they've gone through, and basically their perspective on life. So a couple examples. In Hagrid's lesson, only people who have witnessed death can see thestrals, which is a metaphor basically for people people that have experienced death and loss in their life have a different perspective on life than those who haven't.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, they see things differently, or they see things that people who have not gone through that process or that experience do not see. So Harry and Hermione also hold very different perspectives on the circumstances of his kiss with Cho, because Hermione can come at the situation from a girl's perspective. Harry doesn't have that perspective. He can't understand why Cho is so upset, even though she, tells him.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then obviously, like the most obvious one, finally, like Harry views the attack on Mr. Weasley at the end of the chapter from the perspective of Nagini rather than like an outside witness, which affects how he actually feels about what happened and about himself in regards to the situation. So it changes his perspective, as well as, just the fact that he saw it in a different perspective changed his perspective on what
Hmm.
happened.
Well, I feel like not only are our politics p words, right? But privilege is a like recognizing privilege is a matter of perspective, right?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah. Well, and whether you have or don't have privilege changes your perspective
oh,
on certain situations.
wow, that is so deep.
Yeah.
Like, whew.
I mean, they go together so well. And obviously, like both of our politics are very, like, they tie back to politics very much, in the fact that like a lot of people's political views are are informed by their, whether or not they have privilege, and also what perspective they have on the world or the situation or the specific policy that's being enacted. Like someone, like a woman will have a different perspective on, abortion rights than a man, because their life experiences are different,
Correct.
and therefore their perspectives, each person's perspective informs their politic and what they
Well, I mean, yes, how we see the world is informed not only by the bodies we inhabit and the situations in which we have been born into, because no one chooses to be born into any kind of situation.
Mhm.
I would think not. I would rather be born as like a billionaire. But but also our ability or our willingness to open ourselves up to different, as you say, perspectives can also alter how we view the world and what decisions we make in this world.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I kind of, so when we get to, quote moment of
I mean, we can move
like
on to
where,
that. I would love to do the deep dive right now.
okay, so yeah, I listed a few different examples of how perspective plays in this chapter, uh, during, the last segment. But I think that obviously the defining one in the chapter is the attack on Mr. Weasley at the end, because Harry literally views it from a different perspective. So like the entire chapter is going from, you know people being unable to see things from other perspectives and literally just seeing things from their own perspective, and then at the end it flips and Harry is literally like shoved into a perspective that he is not familiar with, and is being forced to view this event through a different perspective. And after the dream happens, he continually refers to the attacker as himself, or he refers to himself as the attacker when recounting it to Ron and his flatmates, and, or I guess what, dorm roommates, and McGonagall at the end, saying like, I was doing this, or I did this, I attacked him. But obviously, like, that's not the case, but that's how it looked and felt to him because he viewed it from this perspective. So basically, what I'm trying to say is being able to, like, obviously in this case he was kind of forced into this different perspective, but if we are able to step out of our own perspective and view things from other perspectives, like, we will be able to take a more empathetic look on the world and understand people a lot more easily, and probably make the world a better place. So perspective is very important.
I feel like this is just like a moment of and world peace.
Well, I mean, like, say that you're part of, you have privilege, and you are I don't know, say you're a white person who is watching all, like I was, like I am, watching all these Black
Oh,
Lives
I'm
Matter
sorry. Are you
movements.
not white anymore?
I know, I was like, I was. What are you talking? I meant like back in the times of like you're a white person back in the times of the Black Lives Matter like riots and things that were going on,
Uh,
the
I wouldn't
protests.
call them
Um,
riots. I think I would. I don't know.
I mean that's just like when it was very first starting. A lot of people referred to them as riots. They were protests. I mean, some of them were
I think the people. Okay, so
like
honestly,
I mean
honestly, like
like the times where they were like looted, like when the looting was happening during those protests is kind of like the specific time I was talking about.
okay.
Um,
I think we could call them. Oh, there was a term for it that is not riot or insurrection. It's
well, no, it wasn't, and not an insurrection
no, no,
at
no, no,
all.
no.
No, I
Well, the thing is that riot and insurrection are terms that are kind of interchangeable. So that's why I'm kind of thinking riots
yeah,
is not necessarily the uprising. Black Lives Matter uprising.
uprising.
Yes.
Okay, definitely. And see, like that's a perspective that like I want to hear and like learn from because me being white and having the privilege that I do, a lot of people that I saw talking about them, at least at the very beginning when there was, it was a lot of physical things
Well, there
happening.
was a
I don't
lot
know how to
of
explain.
protest that was physical in nature that
Yes,
was
yes. That's kind of
not
it's trying to what I'm
that
trying to
was not,
say, not
like,
well.
socially acceptable because, we think as a society that people of color should use quote unquote acceptable channels to voice their opinions. But like when, Kaepernick took a knee, they were like, no, not like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and like when I said right, I definitely wasn't equating it to what happened at the Capitol. I think of that like I never thought of the word
Oh,
riot.
so no, I didn't I want you to know that I didn't think that you personally thought that riot
Yeah.
was that like that,
Yes.
but a lot of
Yes.
people
Yeah.
do equate insurrection with riot. So that's why the word uprising is a much more positive way of really showcasing what actually happened because you have a marginalized group fighting for their rights in a physical way that manifests their
Exactly.
struggle.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So that's definitely a better way to put it. So what I was trying to say was, like imagine you're a white person during the times of the Black Lives Matter movement uprisings, back last year, as I was and still am, but not. I mean, it's not the same time. So that's what I was trying to say. Is like back then, I was a white person experiencing that specific event. Um, like if you are unable as a white person to put your to change your perspective and try to see what was going on in the world through the perspective of the black community who is seriously hurting and understand why they were hurting, you're just gonna look at it and be like, well, these people are blowing shit up and making a mess and causing violence and like they're crazy or whatever awful people said during that time
Yeah.
because they're not even attempting to see it from a different perspective. The only way that anybody can be understanding of any sort of opposing political view or different type of lifestyle or you know environment that you've grown up in is you have to be able to see things from other perspectives.
Yeah, I think you I mean, obviously,
That's the only way we can reach understanding.
yeah.
So perspective is extremely important, and Harry does that while not willingly. He is forced to do that in this
Well,
chapter.
he is held hostage. One of the things that I wanted to kind of voice about this shift in perspective and Harry's point of view, right, is that
Yeah,
not only is he seeing things as if he's watching a movie through the snake's eyes, because that would be too simplistic, right? He is also thinking and feeling the same things the snake is feeling and thinking. So there's like an extra depth, an additional depth to that. Because it is one thing to experience it in a documentary, for instance, right, Helene? Like you could see what happened to someone,
Right.
and that does not probably carry the same weight as experiencing the thoughts and feelings of that person on top of that.
Well, yeah, there's the difference of being sympathetic and empathetic, right? I am a very empathetic person, and it's very important to me that people at least attempt to feel what other people are feeling rather than sympathize with what other people are feeling. There's a difference between understanding what people are like, seeing what people are feeling, and you know, understanding on a basic level. But then empathy is obviously like actually feeling what they're feeling.
Yes, and I think another part of this that I wanted to make sure we kind of covered was the idea of limits and like limitations. So
Hmm.
the more marginalized or less resources a person has,
Yeah,
the less reserves for that kind of empathy they have. So that's probably why you see a lot of um, people who happen to be white but are impoverished and also living under like disabilities. So there's like a, it's almost like a matrix of where where you fall, right,
yeah.
in society. And although whiteness, is as a default, quote unquote default,
Mm.
is giving people a leg up, there are things like physical and mental disabilities and existing medical issues and economic limitations and educational access to good education, like all these other things that can and do limit people's mobility in life beyond just their skin color. So that's probably why you see a lot of, and I am not condoning the behavior, but I'm also asking all of us to think about, okay, empathy is a muscle, right, that you get to kind of flex, but also there are limits, right? So like if you are an impoverished white person with disabilities and maybe you're queer, like let's just say like there are other issues at hand that put you at a different level than say yourself, their capacity to build that quote unquote muscle is much lower than yours. It's almost like they're super out of shape and you're expecting them to run a marathon, right? But then you're super in shape and you can run a marathon. And those two things, like it's step by step, you know?
Yeah,
So, I mean, although I think, yes, whiteness is a privilege that people are just given and and born with, it is
yeah.
not the only indicator of where you stand or what adversities you may or may not face.
Very true. Very true. Well,
Who's the character?
my yeah, the character that I feel embodies perspective the most in this chapter is Hermione.
Mhm, mhm.
I know you thought I was going to say Harry, right? Because the whole Nagini thing at the end. No, it's Hermione. Um, I'm just pulling out all the unexpected things here. I think she embodies the chapter most, or the politic most, because she is very steadfast in her perspectives and very sure about them in this chapter, and provides very unique outlooks due to her experiences and knowledge that allow her to have unique perspectives and give insight to some situations. So, like the whole Hagrid Umbridge situation at the beginning of the chapter, like she is so positive that she knows who Hagrid is and what's happening in this situation because she's seeing it from a perspective of like someone who is not a Slytherin and or Umbridge in this scene. I'm not explaining it very well, but like Umbridge and the Slytherins in that scene, like, you know, when I say the Slytherins, I mean like Pansy and Malfoy and
Well,
Goyle
she
and
sees
shit.
it for what it is, an attempt to put Hagrid in a corner he can't get out of.
Exactly. Yes. And she sees what's going on from a very different perspective than Umbridge. You know, she's looking at the class, she's seeing how Hagrid is handling things, how he's teaching, and she sees it from what I would say is arguably the right perspective, if there is such a thing. While Umbridge sees it from, you know, her biased, racist, you know, anti half breed perspective.
Or honestly, anti any professor who is close to Dumbledore perspective. Let's be real.
True, true. Although I do believe the fact that Hagrid is a half giant definitely plays into her
Oh,
prejudice against
a
him. And
thousand
yeah,
percent yes. The only reason
yes,
she couldn't really like bring McGonagall down is because McGonagall is so fucking like precise in her
yeah.
teaching and her feathers cannot be ruffled. But she
Well,
fucking tried.
and I believe that McGonagall's a half blood. I think her father was a Muggle, but like, so she's not a pure blood, but she is also she's not a half breed.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
there's also that she doesn't have that to hold over her.
Again, levels of
Anyway,
power.
yes, and then obviously the other time where Hermione has her unique perspective in the chapter is with Cho and Harry and
Yeah.
being able to literally see everything that happens in that room with under the mistletoe, like from Cho's perspective, and explain it to Harry, who literally had no idea what was going on.
I love it. This is great.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so how do we see perspective like running throughout the course of the series?
I kind of when I was thinking about how to answer this question, the thing that came to mind was like the fact that the entire series is written from Harry's perspective is like kind of a running joke throughout the fandom
Mhm.
because he's so oblivious and like unobservant that like anything could have been happening in the background and we as readers wouldn't know because we're reading this from Harry's perspective and he is just like super oblivious.
I mean, Harry, same. Harry and like we got a lot in common, but keep going.
Exactly. So the fact that like we are literally seeing all of the events of this entire saga from Harry's perspective is like very telling and I would love to see like you know how I've actually talked about this on Mugglecast this last week, but like Stephanie Meyer wrote the first Twilight book from Edward's perspective,
Mhm.
and called it Midnight Sun and released it last year. I haven't read it, but like, how cool would it be to like, even if we don't get the full 7 books, but like, even to just get one book from a different character's perspective, or like, even if the books were written in like third person, you know,
I mean, they
to
are
see,
written in third person, they're just written in third person limited. So like
yeah,
maybe yeah, like if they were written third person omniscient, that would be really interesting.
yeah, wouldn't that be? I mean, there are points on the series, obviously. I think like the most obvious chapter, there's 2 chapters that
Yeah,
come
so
to
there's
mind
like
that
chapter the
are
chapter where like Snape's like kind of point of view where like the
yes, Spinner's End.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's yeah, Spinner's End and then the other minister. Those are the 2 that come to mind that are specifically not from Harry's perspective because he was not there.
yeah.
And I'm sure there are more, but like the
That comes
99.9% of
later
the
in the
series is
series, and I feel like that's, the author's way of breaking away from her self-imposed, third third person, limited view and trying something new creatively.
yeah.
You know, like, I think it's more of you know, she created this jail for herself and doing
Yeah.
third person limited and her trying to flex those creativity muscles in a different way, but she knew that she could only do it in, like, a such limited way.
Yeah, and it actually makes me think of like I haven't watched it yet, but the play Puffs, which is supposed to be the series through like the Hufflepuff's perspective.
Okay, so we need to watch this together because I don't know that I haven't watched it either.
Yeah, I think you can rent it. I think you can rent it on Amazon Prime. So, well, yeah, we can watch it. I've been meaning to watch it for so long, but it is like a play through the perspective of like at least one Hufflepuff, if not the entire house. As I said, I haven't seen it, but like it show like it would imagine watching the series through the eyes of like I don't know a Zachariah Smith or
I
something
mean,
like
I like as Gryffindor number 4, like, imagine
yeah.
watching, like, this guy who's, like, super popular and your house just, like, do all these things and you're like, "I just wanna get good grades," or kind
Right.
of?
Exactly. So yeah, I think the entire series is very, very persuaded by the perspective we see it through. So
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, of course, like, legitimately, the series, the way it's told is mainly through a white man's point of view. Granted, this white man is orphaned, and also, like, even though he's rich, he's not, like he doesn't quite understand how to access his wealth, and also
yes, and he also
lives with his
definitely has
abusive,
some.
like, family members.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say he definitely has some like mental health issues. He has PTSD. You know, there's a like a lot of things that he struggles with. So,
Also, he
um,
wants, like, a class on how girls think, like, that is peak Harry, like, I was just like, "Clap, clap, clap, Harry," like, yeah.
oh yeah, that was a really funny moment in the chapter.
Oh, alright.
But, what quoter moment, defined your perspective or your politic of privilege, in this
My
chapter,
perspective of
AJ?
privilege,
Yeah, your perspective of privilege.
alright, so, honestly, like I said before, like, the entire idea of thestrals and how they are described, and explained in this chapter informed my politic of privilege. So there is like the moment that Harry realizes why he can see the Thestrals while other people cannot. There is and obviously I'm speaking from experience. Like there's a moment of being a
Mhm,
woman of color in a mainly white male dominated workforce where
mhm.
you are told, you need to wait for your turn. You're not good enough. Like, but you're not really told in those terms, Helene. You're kind of
Yep.
told without being told. Even though you have a better education than anyone around you,
Yeah,
which is amazing. And you're like, how can I see this and other people can't? Am I going fucking insane?
yeah. I mean, it's like
Yeah,
gaslighting,
so, like,
right? Like
there are, like, simple moments, like a coworker nicknaming you Chiquita Banana.
oh my god, someone did that to you?
Oh, yeah, of course. And you laugh it off because you're like, "Whatever." It's not a fight worth picking in terms of, I'm dealing with larger issues than just being nicknamed Chiquita Banana. There are other moments of your colleagues questioning your edits on something when they have like a stupid degree that has nothing to do with writing. And you're like, literally, both of my degrees are about writing. So shut the fuck up. And you can't say that, Helene, Even though
Sure.
they can question you in the open, you cannot return that questioning with a defensive gesture because if not, you're aggressive because you are a woman of color.
Yeah,
Or just a woman, period, because you don't wanna be seen as emotional.
yeah,
So, what do you do in those instances where you can see things that others cannot? Do you resort to chaos and just say, "Fuck it"? Or do you just say, "Okay, I understand that things are this way. They are not fair, but I am going to not try to change the system from within because I don't think systems can be changed from within, but navigate the system the best way I can. So the idea of ancestral to me is that is a moment that you cannot see until it happens to you, until you are stripped of some form of armor that was keeping you from seeing your own privilege. When
I have
I
a
w-
question.
Go ahead.
Sorry. No, finish your thought. I just don't want to forget my question, but finish your thought.
Okay, so I'll make it brief. So when I was teaching, when all of this was happening, not that it stopped happening, but um, my true beginning into the workforce, I was also teaching a technical writing course and a rhetoric and composition course for freshmen. So I had like three jobs because hashtag millennial back in
I feel that.
2012 and
Oh, I feel that.
2013.
Yep.
Yeah. I was making $14 an hour at my normal job, so I needed to supplement
Yeah.
somehow.
Oh my, were
Um,
we the same person? I swear to God. Anyway.
Also, like $14 an hour with a side note, $14 an hour in 2013 with a fucking master's degree is a fucking insult.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Period.
is.
But whatever. I made it work. And
Of course you did.
so we were talking about, so in my rhetoric and composition class, we were talking about like logical fallacies, how to spot them, because that's like a big part of that class is how to construct arguments that are not using logical fallacies, first of all. But the other part is to, even in people that you agree with,
Hmm.
notice logical fallacies being used to persuade you to do something that may not have total backing, right? So one of the big things we did was we watched that Bush 9/11 speech where he was using a lot of like emotional rhetoric
Okay.
to incense the public into being okay with a war. And another part was like watching a TED talk. So I went like both sides, right? Like super Republican and then kind of liberal about talking about sexism in the workplace. It was like a TED talk or something like that. And one of my students said, like, was obviously much more critical about the sexism part than the Bush part. Because one, she was clearly
Republican.
and said out loud that she was a conservative, right? This is
Okay.
back in 2013, though. So, like,
Yeah.
9/11
Well,
was
yeah,
still.
being a Republican back in 2013 is not the same as being a Republican now. But
Yeah,
anyways,
I
go
want
on.
to put that out there. But
Yeah.
also, she was like in the agriculture department. Like, it's kind of like her family was like ranchers and stuff like it's a different culture in New Mexico, right?
Okay.
And she was saying to me, I don't believe there's sexism in the workplace. Like I can do whatever like what like I can be whoever I want to be. Like she was very like
Good for
even though
her. Is she white?
yeah, she's white. But there is sexism in the workplace even if you are white
Even
sometimes.
yeah, but it's not as. But yeah, I mean, there are levels. You know.
I know, I understand that, but, she was talking to me about it and kind of, like, pushing back in class, and I'm obviously totally okay with that because that's what the class is for, and she was like, "This is, like, liberal propaganda," and, everything she's heard her Christian parents say, um, and, it's like, I would love to check in on you with you after you graduate and go to your first job. Because let me tell you, like I honestly thought a little bit like her, Helene. Like it's not as bad.
Well, I
Like
mean,
it's not as bad as it was before. Like women,
she's
we can do anything we can. We are smart. We are competent. We don't need no man. And
well, yes, but you cannot talk about whether or not there's sexism in the workplace if you have not been in a professional work environment.
correct. And that's the whole point, right? Like I was talking to them about that. And the reason, right? One of the reasons she could not see it is because she had been in like a lot of us, and I am including myself in this,
Mhm.
we've grown up in a bubble where our dads or whomever tell us you can be whoever you want to be because you're smart, you're resilient, you're tough or whatever. And then we go out into the real world and that bubble bursts. And I'm not saying that I didn't expect racism because I totally did. My dad really prepared me for that shit.
Uh-huh.
But he didn't quite prepare me for the amount of sexism that I would face in the workforce. And my first job as a teacher, I did not experience sexism, but teaching is, at least the in the school
It's
that
a
I was
female,
teaching,
yeah.
was a female driven
Yeah.
profession.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, like if there was sexism, I did not see it. But once I switched careers and went into male dominated fields, let me tell you, I could fucking see it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go ahead. You were asking a question.
Well, so my question was, because you were talking about how seeing festivals was kind of like having a privilege stripped away from you,
Mhm.
and you could see something that people with privilege could not see.
Correct.
So then my question was, what do you think about the when Hermione said that she wished she could see them? Like, I think it's just an interesting, like,
So,
metaphor,
like,
you know?
like a lot of, like, I'm not just saying white people, but like, like a lot of really privileged people who have empathy, right? And who want to
Yeah.
understand. She
Yep.
says she wishes she could see it because she understands it in theory but not in practice, but she wants to understand it at a deeper level.
Well, that's Hermione's, like, nature of wanting to know everything. Yeah.
Of course, which is why, I stand. But it comes across the wrong way
Yeah.
because what she is wishing for is for one of the things that she takes for granted to be stripped away. So for instance, right now we are doing COVID pandemic, and one of the things that people are grappling with, like people who haven't had to rely on the government for benefits or subsistence, is that
Mhm.
people are frustrated with the way the government works because they haven't had, other than the DMV and other like regular things that we have to do every couple of years or whatever with the
Yeah.
government, they haven't had to interact with government bureaucracy in the same way that poor people have had to.
Totally.
So now with COVID, if you lost a job, you have to do unemployment, and if like then there has like food, like SNAP benefits,
Yeah, I
and
was
like,
gonna say food stamps, yeah.
so all of these things that people could literally not see because they didn't have to access are
Yeah.
becoming a frustration during the pandemic because now they have to access it. Especially also like vaccine rollout, like complete trash fire, because the government is not meant for efficiency in the way that we do it in the United States. It is meant to discourage poor people from accessing the assistance that the
Yeah.
government is supposed to give them.
Yeah. It's just in the chapter, it's just like it's so rushed past because like Hermione is like, "Oh, I wish I could see them." And Harry goes, "You do?" And then she goes, "Oh no, I didn't mean that. Like, I obviously that's not what I mean." And he goes, "Well, then don't worry about it." But like what I wanted him to say was like, "Oh, you want to see him? Okay, I'll just invite you to the next murder I'm at." Like next time Voldemort decides to kill someone in front of me, I'll make sure that you get the invitation.
So the thing about that I really, I mean, if I may, like I know, like, yes, we know that her intention wasn't completely nefarious, obviously, and then she
Yeah, of course.
backtracks. I think that that is something we should model more. When we step in it
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
someone says,
Well, I mean,
"Really?"
I literally did. I really did that earlier already in the chapter,
No, it's
in the episode.
but you know what I
But
mean? Like, really? Do you really mean that? Then, like, to have the
yeah.
conscience of mind of instead doubling down and creating a big deal out of something that you can learn from because you are more committed to your the sanctity of your own rightness, quote unquote, than
Yeah.
learning from your mistakes. You know, like, rather than doubling down to say, "Oh my god, I just listened to myself. I didn't mean it like that. Thank you."
Well, so yeah, exactly what happened earlier in the episode where when I said riots, I called the Black Lives Matter protests riots, and you said, "Hey, maybe that's not what I don't. That's probably not what we should call them." And I was like, "Oh my god, you're right. I'm sorry. I totally didn't mean it that way. I meant to call them uprisings instead. Now that I know the proper term, like that. That's what. Yeah. Instead of me, I could have easily just been like." Well, no, they were riots. What are you talking about? There was looting and blah blah blah. You know, like I could have just doubled down to make it so that I didn't look like a bad person. When
Because I
in
mean,
reality, like, my privilege was speaking for me right there, and I learned
I
something,
think that
you know?
another, that's a great example. I wasn't trying to make a point, honestly.
No. No, I
But
know you weren't.
but another thing is like is in order for everyone to grow, right? Like, no matter who you are, you have
Mhm.
to be open to other perspectives, like your politic, right? And
Right.
to really sit with them and think, oh shit, like maybe I was wrong or I didn't have the entire
Exactly.
information. So, like, sure, we see the book through Harry's eyes, but what if we got like three other perspectives that would round up the story in a more objective way? What would that look like?
Yeah, like, I'm reading the Heroes of Olympus series, I finally started it, by Rick Riordan, and that book is the first one written by Rick Riordan that I've read that is written from multiple perspectives, right? So
Uh
there's,
huh.
like,
Uh huh. I love
each
it.
chapter yeah, each chapter is a different character's perspective. So, like, imagine if the book was written in, like, a split, Harry's perspective and then maybe, like, I don't know,
Hermione,
Snape's perspective.
Ron, Dumbledore, maybe not Dumbledore because he's too, like, mysterious, but, like,
Maybe, like
it could be
Snape
the
or
kids, like
Malfoy.
Neville.
Malfoy even, like, I'd love to, like, yeah, I don't think Malfoy's a good person, and I think that he was in the wrong 99.9% of the time, but it would still be interesting to see the book from his perspective.
Yeah, I mean, even if you said, like, let's keep it to, like, the trio and occasionally, like, one of like, Jenny, Neville, like, because Rick Riordan, I don't think necessarily he never really does it from, like, the perspective of the antagonist maybe, but,
That's true,
like
that's true.
like the golden trio and sometimes Jenny and sometimes Neville and so like still the kids, so the kids have limited information and Dumbledore remains like more mysterious and McGonagall and the Order, that would be really interesting.
Oh, unbelievably, yes.
So another thing about privilege that I wanted to bring up was
Yes.
that it means nothing without trust. And what I mean by this is that
Hmm.
it requires for people with privilege to trust the person explaining the privilege to them that they cannot see, for
Yes.
them to see or kind of understand the privilege that they have.
Yeah, yes, I was actually this actually came up in I'm gonna talk about this in my media, but I was watching a YouTube video, from a YouTuber, and in it, they explain that, like, that's what this concept is why it's so important to, like, believe women, believe victims, because these people can see things from a perspective that you can't because they've been through something you haven't. And it's the same with minority groups, it's the same with people of color. When these people tell you what their experiences are, you have to take them at their word. You have to believe them because obviously you don't know as someone with privilege.
Well, but it's Helene, yes, and that is a great sentiment, but at the same time, we are human beings who
Mhm.
are more open to the ideas of those people we know and trust rather
True.
than even if that's an influencer. I'm not saying like someone you know and talk to every day, right? Like a trusted quote unquote source,
True.
which is how misinformation can also spread because someone you trust sent you a link to something.
Yeah.
You're thinking, of course they did the background, research on this. I don't need to do it.
Mhm.
So Helene, like if someone you didn't trust told you, well, actually, it's not a riot, like would
Mhm.
you have a big heart and you would probably try to listen. But would you just as readily say, okay, so what I meant to say was uprising?
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. I am definitely more of a trusting person than the average human. So asking me specifically is probably not like, you
Yeah,
know,
no, but like that's what I mean. Like it has to
yeah,
come from someone you trust. So when Hagrid tells Harry, this is the reason you can see Thestrals. And then everyone else is like, but they're supposed to be about luck. And Hagrid's like, no, no, no. Like that's just like a misunderstanding. And this is why. If
yeah,
that had come from Umbridge, Harry wouldn't have trusted that as much as if it came from Hagrid.
very true. Yeah,
So the not only so that involves a lot of trust. And that's, I think, where in our American politic, we are so divided and we are so distrustful of each other that
true.
people who have privilege, they cannot see it, just as they cannot see the virus. And like all these white supremacists are like, I don't see the virus, I don't give a fuck, I'm not gonna wear a mask. And like there's no such thing as white privilege because I don't see it in my life. They've already been conditioned to, like, one, not believe what they cannot see and understand, and two, complete and utter like bias against any marginalized person. So that really blinds them to the concept of not just, privilege in this case, but also COVID, which can and will infect them and maybe kill them.
Yeah.
That's my fun and delightfully light conversation about privilege in this
Well,
chapter.
what character do you think embodied privilege or the idea of privilege the most in this
So for
chapter?
me, it wasn't that Hagrid has privilege. It's that
Hmm.
he was the trusted source of explaining privilege to Harry. The ability to see thestrals, which was something that Harry
Okay.
was like, fuck, am I fucking going crazy? I'm seeing creatures that no one else can see. Like
Hmm.
just like when I was like, I swear to God, this is because I'm a woman of color and because like English is my second language, even though I don't really have an accent, but they know it's my second language and they're being like dicks about it.
Hmm.
Like the anxiety of like, am I imagining this or is this really happening? Until someone who you trust validates that for you,
Hmm.
you cannot have peace.
Yeah. Where do you see privilege throughout the book? I mean,
I
I know
mean, the
it's
entire fucking series. Like,
yeah.
it's
I was gonna
talking
say
about
like
like
it's kind of like a
it's a whole
obvious
book
question.
about about like how there is intersectionality of these different types of privilege, right? So like there is blood purity,
Hmm.
which gives you one certain kind of privilege, versus wealth, accumulated wealth, which makes like the Malfoys and the Weasleys two different categories of wizards, even though they're both purebloods, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like the ways in which other magical humanoids or like, human like magical beings who are not wizards are treated throughout the wizarding world and the series and subjugated to wizards, like, house elves, giants, vampires and fairy,
Werewolves.
werewolves, so like all these things you cannot really control are are purported to be just looking up at wizards and marveling at their supremacy. you know?
Right. Yep.
But even within wizarding society, there are structures of blood purity and class that also further divide the wizarding class because, I mean, everyone likes to feel better than someone else. So the Malfoys are like, we're better than the Weasleys because we're richer, bitches. And like the Weasleys can probably say, like, we're at least we're not house elves, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm not saying like that is malicious. It's just human fucking nature.
Yeah.
Or like the
Well,
Weasleys can say, at least we're not muggles or squibs.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
Fun things, fun,
Yeah,
depressing things to think about. So let's move on to our Deventures and
yeah,
chapter.
I was gonna say, now we can move on to other things that anger us. Uh, what was your, Dementor? What didn't you like in the chapter?
I mean, unsurprisingly, my Dementor in this chapter was Umbridge and how she fucking manipulated her observation to be spiteful, racist, classists, and all the isses against Hagrid.
Yeah, mine is the exact same, basically. Yeah, Umbridge. The way it's particularly the way she speaks to Hagrid,
Oh,
like he's a fucking idiot and just belittling him just his intelligence. She belittles his intelligence the entire time by the way she's speaking with him, in what seemed to me like an attempt to like a weird, gross attempt to just amuse and entertain Malfoy and Pansy and Crabbe and Goyle. Like she would say it and then they would laugh because and then I feel like she would just continue to do it because she knows that they're gonna laugh. And she was like doing it for their amusement.
Umbridge, like, fucking hate her, man. Like,
It's the
just
worst.
again, like the same reasons why I fucking like picked her as my Dementor. It's just like,
Yeah, I
bitch,
want
we
to.
pretended not to hear Hagrid. So he was like, "Are you dull? Let me dumb it down for you." And then you use that to pretend like he was dumb.
I think when we finish this book, I kind of want to go back through all of our like docs and count how many of the chapters I chose Umbridge as my Dementor because I feel like I choose her every time.
Anytime she's on a chapter, Helene, I feel like you choose her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I literally like nothing is worse than the way that she treats other people. I just can't.
Also, there was like that one snide comment where she was like, "Oh, he. It seems like he's happy when other people are."
He's
Um,
happy at the thought of violence. Is that what you're
yes,
trying? Like,
something like that. And I was like, "Bitch, you're the
yeah,
most violent person I know."
yeah. It's like, oh, he takes pleasure at the thought of violence. Like, fuck you. No, he
I'm
doesn't.
like,
Like,
fuck you. First of all, he does not. And two, you are literally the person making Harry like write out his stuff in his own fucking blood and scar him.
yeah. But let's move on to better things because I don't want to think about Umbridge any longer than we have to. So, Adri, what was your chocolate in this chapter? What did you love in this chapter?
Surprising to no one. My Hermione, my chocolate was Hermione. Now Hermione and chocolate is just like the same thing to me. It's like Hermione's incredible show of empathy and emotional intelligence. Not just when she was explaining Cho's emotional roller coaster to Harry, which Cho herself explained it to Harry, um, as you noted earlier, but
Yep.
even before when she was like, "Oh, did she kiss you then? Like, did you guys kiss?" Like that show of emotional intelligence. I am here for it.
Yeah, that was just another showcase of like how Hermione can be smart. Because yeah, she's book smart, but she can definitely be street smart and like emotionally smart as well. So
Yeah. Also, like when it's just my favorite line. Like Ron's like, no one can feel like all of that at once. Just like, just because you have the emotional range of a teaspoon.
yeah,
Just, it's everything to me.
yes, there were a lot of iconic lines in this chapter,
Well,
including
also,
that one.
okay, so like side note, I tease my husband about like him being a robot because he has limited emotions. So that's it. That's it. That's a
Oh,
tweet.
oh, okay. Well, sorry, Seth. Uh, my chocolate. My chocolate. I had to choose a moment that I literally laughed so loud, out loud, reading this moment that I was like, "Well, I have to choose this for my chapter or for my chocolate," because it just made me like legitimately just so happy. Was Harry walking into the room of requirement before the Dumbledore's army meeting to find that Dobby had decorated the whole room with like there was like a banner that said "Have a very hairy Christmas," and then the part that got me was like
Beautiful.
all the baubles hung up that had his face on. I just like
First off,
I
I feel
imagined.
like that's a first off, I would like to say that that feels like a sticker in the making.
Oh my god,
Just throwing that out
I just like imagined all of these like decorations hanging with Harry, like different pictures of Harry's face on them, like probably candid photos that like Dobby ended up taking of Harry when he wasn't looking, like just hanging all over the room.
picking his nose.
Yeah, like I don't know, sneezing, like I don't like sleeping in class, just things like that. I it just made me very happy to just imagine that. And then you get kind of a play on that during his the first part of Harry's dream before he turns into like the snake attack where it's like
Yeah,
his like anxiety
with Dobby.
dream. Well, his anxiety dream is
Yeah.
like, Cho set like accuses him of luring her to the room of requirement under false pretenses and promising her a bunch of chocolate frog cards and like Cedric gave me so
150.
yeah, and
100.
Cedric gave me chocolate frog cards. Look at all of them. And then like something, and then like Dobby comes. He's like trying to hang up a bauble in the shape of Dobby's head, and I was like, oh, nice callback to that other part in the chapter where there was baubles of his face everywhere.
Speaking of anxiety dreams, Helene, like I know this isn't a chocolate, but like have you yet had the anxiety dream of like being out in public and you forgot to bring a mask?
No, actually, no, I haven't.
Like that is a one of my so it used to be like for me anxiety dreams are either I'm falling into the abyss, which like, soup's fun, and like being naked in public, like being out in public and
Oh,
suddenly
see,
like looking down
I
and
don't.
being like shit, like I don't fucking have any clothes on. I forgot to put any clothes on. The
See,
newest take on this for me has been I am out and about in like a mall or whatever, which by the way, have not been at in a fucking while, and it's killing me inside. And like being like, shit, I don't have a mask. I am
see,
going to die of COVID.
yeah, I get anxiety dreams all the time, but mine are usually my normal one is it's the first day of like a semester or a new like quarter at school
Mhm,
with like new
mhm.
classes, and I don't know what classes I have and where they're located, and so like I like don't know where to go, and I'm like gonna miss all my classes, and like in college on if you don't go to the first day of class, like your spot is given to someone on the wait list, and so like it's
Ah.
always like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it to the first day of class and then I'm going to lose all my spots in my classes. I'm not going to be able to take any of the classes I wanted to take. And yeah, that's the anxiety dream that I always have.
Speaking of school-based anxiety dreams, the third recurring dream before COVID, right, that I had was the I am in high school and or college. It's sometimes murky. Um, and it is the day of the final exam. Only I have never attended the class and or I have not studied.
Yeah, that's pretty standard. Yeah.
And then I wake up and I'm like, I have a whole ass master's degree and I don't plan on going back to school.
Yeah.
What the
When I wake up from mine, I'm always like, oh, thank God I don't ever have to like go to another class again.
I mean, I really enjoy going to school. I'm not gonna lie to you. So like I wouldn't put that like out of the realm of possibilities, but it's not like it's a current thing that I am doing?
Yeah.
It's like, damn it, like anxiety, like chill the fuck out, you
Right.
know?
Yep. I feel that.
Maybe I do have to talk to my doctor about some new meds.
um,
Because when I started my meds, like all my night anxiety dreams went away. I just wouldn't dream at all. And like in recent months, since my dosage went down, my dreams have been coming back. And I feel like that's a sign of like maybe I was on the right dosage.
Goodness. Anxiety dreams aside, what was our podcast question last week?
Last week, we asked our listeners, what do you think Madame Maxime did after returning from her journey with the giants and stuff? And we got a few answers, Helene.
Not as many answers this week as we are accustomed to, but we did get a couple on Twitter. One from Jeffrey Bernstein at JN Bernstein on Twitter said, I'm guessing she went back to her job as headmistress of Beauxbaton. Remember, it took Hagrid so long to get back to Hogwarts because of his brother. And,
Like,
fair.
fair,
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
Also, like, what a dumb question we asked last time.
Yeah, I mean, assuming that she still works as headmistress of Beauxbaton, yeah, Hagrid only got back like 3 months late into the semester or whatever because of Grop, which we haven't discussed yet on the podcast because it hasn't happened yet in the reread. But
What if, I mean, I guess like a better question might have been like, what excuse does she give for her like impromptu holiday? And I am 1 week late with this question.
I mean, we're not going to always be on point with the question every week. It's kind of difficult. But so this last week wasn't, the most amazing question ever, but I appreciate all
I'm
the
sorry, but like the second answer that you have on the doc is like my favorite.
Yes, Noah, who is at Ephemy on Twitter, EPHIMY, Ephemy, he just said, or they just said, to have sex.
Which, like, is this Archaeopolitics after dark? Because I'm into it.
I mean, obviously not to have sex with Hagrid. So who she be having sex with?
I mean, I'm sorry. Did they define the relationship? If they had not, she's a free woman. She can do whatever she wants
No, I
and
mean,
do whomever she
I
wants.
wasn't saying that it should be Hagrid or that it shouldn't be anyone other than Hagrid. I was just saying, obviously, like after she returned from her journey, Hagrid was not there, and we all know that Hagrid likes her, but she doesn't feel the same. So, who did she have sex with? I'm
I
just
mean,
curious.
she may or may not feel the same, but also, like, there are a ton of French people who are very sexy. So who knows?
Yeah, that's true. Maybe like Floor's dad or
No
something.
shame in that game. So this week's question is, if you could choose one character who you could read the entire series from their point of view, who would that character be? I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Because I would also like to know like the why behind it. Like, is it Ginny because then you could see her progression towards Harry's feelings and how she like is super smart, athletic, and funny, and we don't get to see like so much of her smart, funny side? Is it like a Slytherin point of view, a specific Slytherin's point of view because you want to understand the ambition and the cunning behind Slytherin? Is it Ernie Macmillan's point of view? Like, who? I would just love to know.
Yes, please tell us. And we will read your response on the podcast next week when we record the next episode.
Speaking of recordings and things that people listen to and things people consume,
Yeah.
Helene, it is time for us to wind down and talk about something not Potter related, which is the media that we've been consuming.
Yes, I'm very excited. This week, and if you follow me on social media, if you're my family or someone who I have been in any sort of contact with this week, you have already been bombarded with me telling you to go watch this video.
Yes,
You
texted it to me.
I texted it to you. I texted it to my entire family. Like I tweeted about it. I swear to God, like I have not been able to shut up about it since I watched it. But the media I've been consuming this week is Natalie Wynn, who is also known as ContraPoints. She is a trans woman YouTuber who releases extremely thought out and well researched, informative content and videos. And she just released, like yesterday, as of recording, Tuesday, January 26th, she released a video on J.K. Rowling. And obviously, all of the things surrounding J.K. Rowling right now. So the trans issues, the
Yay.
her new
Yeah.
book. But the really interesting part about it is that like while she is a trans woman herself, she definitely comes at it from a stance of understanding and trying to explain why people might be feeling certain things. She doesn't spend the entire hour and a half long video just like attacking Joe for like being an awful transphobe. She really like
Which, by the way, she could have,
she definitely could
and
have,
I
yeah.
wouldn't have, like, blamed her.
Yeah, but the thing, I mean, the media is so just the conversation around it is so saturated with that type of point
No,
of
no,
view.
I understand what you're saying. Like, she comes at it from a, like, a more like, she tries to do perhaps a more nuanced point of view that would be less, divisive to people who are more likely to take Joe's side.
Exactly. Yes, and I think she does an amazing job of it. She actually is kind of well known for she released a video a few months back about cancel culture, like and not in support of it. Which I watched I watched most of that video. I don't think I watched all of it, but it's also very interesting if you want to kind of see a different perspective on cancel culture. But this one about J.K. Rowling is the thing I loved the most about it is that she read the entirety, all like 900 pages or some whatever. I think it's at least 850 pages of her new book, Troubled Blood, which has received critique from the trans community and decent human beings for the fact that the antagonist is a cross-dressing serial killer that
Mhm.
obviously plays into harmful transphobic tropes and stereotypes, and it perpetuates those stereotypes. So Natalie read the entire book before giving her thoughts on it and pulls out really interesting quotes and passages from it that kind of explain why this is problematic without just saying, oh, it's written by a transphobe. It includes a cross dressing serial killer. It's obviously transphobic. I don't even have to read it. Move on. So,
That is a lot of, and I will say, like, that is a significant amount of emotional and intellectual labor
yeah,
that, Natalie Wynn is, expending
yes.
to make to inform people, and I don't think we should take that for granted.
No, and she just does such an amazing job. She's funny, she's witty, she's just delightful, and the video is so informative. Even though I know everything that's happened, in regards to the J.K. Rowling situation, because I've been so entrenched in it, I do feel like I learned something watching it. And so, I mentioned, it's an hour and a half long video. It's basically the length of a short movie. I highly recommend just taking a night instead of watching, a Harry Potter movie for like the 8 millionth time. Just watch this video. I'll link it on our Twitter feed and our Instagram and our Facebook. And I beg of you, just watch it because it's really good.
Thank you for that really good recommendation. Which is still, we still are talking about Harry Potter. Um, which reminds me, we forgot in our Potter Watch segment to talk about the new HBO live action Harry Potter series.
Yeah, I mean, all I'll say is that it's not anywhere near in production, which is like what most of the people have been reporting on. It is an idea of an idea. Like basically, they hired a TV executive to head all of the future Harry Potter products under the franchise umbrella at Warner Brothers, and they haven't even like written a pitch or hired a head writer or anything. So like it is not anywhere near like actually started, but basically like it might possibly maybe happen one day in the far off future.
I mean, hashtag petition for Chris Rankin to play Arthur Weasley.
I'd love to
Make it
yeah,
happen.
love to see Chris. That would be great.
Because he said he would really like that. Anyway, if it is anything as good as the Golden Compass series, which is also an HBO production, Very excited for that.
You're talking about His Dark Materials?
Yes.
Cool.
Golden Compass is the first book, right? Am
I bel
I like
Yeah, no, there's a movie that was made a while ago called The Golden Compass. Yeah, I believe it's the name of the first book. I haven't read the series, but
it's the name of the yeah, yeah. I've read the series. It's just the name of the first book. I couldn't remember anything else because wine,
the
and
show
I
the show is
puked.
called His Dark Materials. The whole series is called.
Correct, correct, and you are right. So if it is anything as good as His Dark Materials, which is also an HBO production, I am very excited for it.
Yeah.
Even though maybe we should be looking at more original content rather than remaking old one. Anyhow,
Yeah.
the media I have been consuming is 13 Things Mentally Strong People Don't Do by Amy Morin. So, as you know, Helene and faithful listeners of this podcast, some weeks I go high and read academic material or watch a documentary, and other weeks I go very low and I read delightful romance novels, Regency romances, historical romances, full of like delightful, witty banter and great sex scenes, and watch like Real Housewives of Orange County and Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And like other times I'm like in between and I watch like HBO Treinta Monedas, which is like in between the high and low. But this week, this is a kind of like a self help book, but like improvement book. I
Okay.
don't really love the self help title because that has like a very like guru type mentality. Amy Morin is a licensed therapist. So this book is written by a professional, and so she's not an influencer out there trying to sell you like seminars and supplements and like planners and like other branded material. At least I don't think so. I haven't finished the book. um, so I really hope she's not like shelling out retreats where people are forced to do group activities at this point. But I'm like at I think like the third thing mentally strong people don't do. It's really interesting in the sense of these are things that all of us are drawn to do when faced with disaster, with loss, with grief. This is not something that this is this these are things that everyone can relate to. And what she says is sometimes we focus so much on creating good habits that we forget to avoid the bad habits. And
Mm.
what she means by that, and she has like a great analogy that I will parrot now as if it is my own, is it's like building a good habit is like going to the gym without avoiding the bad habit of like eating a dozen donuts on your way home and then thinking, I am not seeing any progress. It must be that my good habit is not working, so I'm going to let it go.
Okay.
So, what she is really saying, like, we kind of already know from like pop culture and all those of us who have been in therapy for a long time about the good habits we should build. What about what are we doing that can sabotage those good habits that we are trying to build?
I like that. Yeah.
So yeah, I think sometimes we focus on like what we need to do rather than what we need to avoid. And those two are very much equally important. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's it. That's what I'm reading.
Awesome. No, I love it. That's really I definitely don't read a lot of self-help books or I don't what did you call them instead of self-help? You called them what's that?
I call them like improvement books.
Yeah,
It,
improvement.
it depends on like the author, right? Like if the author is a respected member of the community in which they are talking about, then I don't think that is like self-help as much as it is like an improvement guide. If we are talking about an influencer like Rachel Hollis, who has no credentials,
Yeah.
talking about like wash your face, girl. That is a self-help book, you know?
Yeah.
Because she's also shilling like an entire line of products too.
Yeah. No, I mean, I've never really read a lot of those, but I think that it never hurts to try and be your best self. And I think that this book sounds like a good way to get there.
Yeah, I mean, what like the first one that really hit home for me was, I mean, spoiler alert to everyone, because I have seen it in my life and other people's lives, is the idea of like self-pity when something bad happens. When you wallow in that, you are not healing because you're not accepting things as they are. So it is a natural response to say, "Oh, poor me," right? Like that's normal. Why not focus on, okay, so this is how things are right now and they suck, but that's how they are. And I'm going to focus on the things that I can change rather than feeling sorry for myself. And this is not someone who hasn't dealt with loss. She lost her husband when she was 26 or 24, something like super young. He died suddenly, very young. And then, you know, she lost a ton of people in her life suddenly. So she lost her mother first, then her husband. Like it was like a big thing. And like she coped, right? But then she learned, not just by being a therapist, but also by her own experience, that the things that really helped her heal and accept and grieve and move on were all the things she avoided rather than the things that she did right, quote unquote, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so what I'm gathering from this is that if you look at your approach to recovery from a different perspective,
What? Yes.
you can see what may and may not be working and what you need to work on.
Well, I mean, it's also, I think one of those things of like, um being alive is hard sometimes. And rather than pretend that it isn't hard or that you have it harder than others or find ways to escape your struggles, you just have to face them as they are and not use magical thinking and they will go away, because they won't.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to like think about, but it's useful as well.
Yes.
All right. And then that's it for today's episode. Join us next week to talk about chapter 22 of Order of the Phoenix, St. Mungo's Hospital for Magical Maladies and Injuries.
Yes, and if you've enjoyed this conversation at all, please take a second to give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now. It helps new listeners discover the podcast and it makes your co hosts all happy and fuzzy inside.
5 estrellas, 5 stars only, please. Thank you. Until then, politics managed, keep safe and keep faith. Good night. Support this show by going to patreon.com/Occhiopolitics. Our patrons keep this show going. You can find us online at Occhiopolitics.com, and we are at Occhiopolitics on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can email us your thoughts at info@Occhiopolitics.com. Leave us a voicemail at 915-996-1699. And you might just hear yourself on the podcast. Adriana Wilson is the founder and creative director of the podcast. Helene Karp is the producer and social media manager. Allison Pullman is the audio wizard and editor who makes us sound so good. Cover art and physical rewards are designed by Adriana Wilson. The views expressed by the hosts and guests are expressly their own and not representative of their employers or associates. Occhiopolitics is part of the MuggleNet family of podcasts.